Okay, this kit, before you had applications on your iPhone, we had appliques. Today we take some inspiration from Louis Vuitton menswear for winter 2024, as designed by our favorite menswear designer.
Wait a minute!
Yeah, that is Pharrell Williams. No comment. However, there's some fun stuff. No, I'm not talking about what he's dragging under his shoe. That hip now, I'm getting old. But these Western style denim appliques, right up from the hem of the jeans. So with the technique shown in today's jeans upcycling tutorial, you can make these or any style appliques you want. And we'll also do some jeans alterations to turn straight jeans into flared jeans. Timestamps below. The first challenge was to get a good template. Many roads lead to Rome. So at first I thought to just find a similar suitable template online to get a shape that's sort of ready to use straight away. But I feel like by the time I would have found that, I could have been to Rome and back. The other option is freehand drawing, trying to eyeball the shapes more or less exactly. But with my drawing skills, I probably could have been to Rome, dance in the Trevi fountain, fall in love, live happily ever after. Well, you get the point. So canva.com it is. I'm just gonna try to print it out in the exact size I want to get it onto the jeans. So I have to guesstimate the size a little, but I do know that it's not gonna fit on one paper. Which means, yes, my worst nightmare coming true, printing on 2 papers. Speaking from tiled printing trauma experience, I'd recommend these exact steps to keep it simple. Import and scale the first part of the image to the size you think you need. Then copy paste that image to a second page. Now it's the correct size, so you don't want to touch the corners anymore. But you can drag the middle of the sides of the image, which will keep the scale the same. So I'm just gonna drag it all the way up till there's just a millimeter left. And then drag the other side out. So now it should actually still fit together pretty well. Yes. I know, genius. To be clear, this tracing method is only gonna work if your image is not very skewed, but that actually could be a pretty cool effect as well. That's not what we're going for today. Can you see the vision? To be honest, I don't have a jeans yet, I think.
Wait a minute!
What's not quite right here? No, I'm not talking about that I look like an absolute idiot on one leg.
To be honest, I don't have a jeans yet, I think.
But the fact that I would strongly recommend to first buy your jeans, do any alterations you need to make, and then decide your size of the application. Because this does not make any sense. Yeah, that's addressed to myself again. For the tracing, I actually wanted to be fancy and use this pattern tracing wheel.
Just then.
Whoa. What happened? Oh my god. Turns out, I don't think pattern tracing tools like to be in calcium chloride, which you use to texture the leather. Check out that tutorial as well. It basically completely rested away. So plan B. Okay, we'll just have to do it the old-fashioned way. No worries, no panic yet, hopefully. Thank God there's a light edge around this, but I guess if you don't have a light edge, you maybe put some filters on it in Canva or something to make this edge a bit more pronounced if you can't see it through. Ew, it was actually really hard to see through the paper. So my hot tip, raised the contrast of the image to make this a little easier. Look, mommy. We must try to perfect things a little bit here, especially on the sides. It's gonna be warped a little bit, of course. So I was glad I accidentally bumped into this side view so I could see what the heck is going on and try to imitate it as well as possible, as well as just generally improving the lines a little bit, as it was all looking a little bit rough. So obviously, I could not find a jeans that was perfect. I feel like a lot of the jeans in the thrift stores are like this now. Somehow never like how they are on my hips. So I feel like the inspiration pick, it does have a little bit of flair, but not too much, and it's also not too tight. I feel like maybe the shape of the leg is actually sort of right, and maybe we can just put a triangle on the outside of the leg. I don't know, usually in a jeans there's one side that you can open much more easily because it's just a normal seam without the extra double top stitching and everything. And this one is on the outside, so that's also mainly the reason why I think I'm gonna open it on the outside, because it's much more easy to insert a triangle there. First I'm gonna open the hems on both sides, and they were closed with a chain stitch. And if you wonder why I sound so excited about that, because if you pull on the right side, you can Open it in one go. So satisfying, if you know, you know. Then I open the outer side seams. And if you're careful, you can open it in one go with your seam ripper. Wow, that was going satisfyingly quick today. But watch out at the top because there's extra top stitching there that you have to seam rip separately if you do not want to alter the hips. Only have to open to up around the knee though. But I'm just gonna open it all the way. Then I press all the seam allowances flat again just to make it a little bit easier to work with. Now you can see there is a lot of hip in these jeans that yours truly does not have, unfortunately. So I'm gonna make that curve a whole lot straighter whilst trying to keep a continuous sort of smooth line all the way from top to bottom without humps and bumps as always, and pin the two sides together again exactly on this new line we just created. If you want to get some out at the leg but you have no clue how much, you can also put the pants on inside out before opening the seams, then add a few pins along the hip to see how much you want to get out. But I'm just basically doing that the other way around, which probably does not make that much sense again. Just so you know, doing everything wrong so you can do them right. That's what my channel is about. So if you vibe with that, don't forget to subscribe if you didn't do that yet. Now you can see the application ends somewhere below the knee. To create flared jeans or triangle should also be ending somewhere below the knee. I don't know if you're thinking what I'm thinking. It would be kind of a lost opportunity in my opinion if we not at least take that into consideration and see if we can somehow visually integrate the triangle with our application without trying to overcomplicate things too much.
I don't get it.
For now, I'm gonna try to make the triangle the exact same height as the application, picking just a straight triangle from another pair of old jeans. It has a very similar color to the main jeans, to be sure it's not gonna compete too much with our application. I'm gonna guesstimate the width. Now it guesstimated on the bigger side. It's always easier to make it smaller later than the other way around. Now, is this how you're supposed to use rulers? Don't look, go get a drink, come back in half a minute. They're all a little bit short or broken in half. Mysteriously, no comment, so please don't tell anyone. Now note how my triangle comes straight out of the fabric, even though we're upcycling, when taking the grain line into account. Very mindful, very demure. I'm gonna pin it in, exactly placing the pins where I would sew, so we can put it on and check it out. Anyway. Oh my god. Going insane. I have new neighbors and they're so noisy. Just have a look in the mirror if you like the fit. Put it on inside out. I feel like for me it's still a little bit too roundish on the top. It's a little bit hard to see because the seams are not cut off. I actually think the leg is sort of fine. I thought maybe it's too much, this big triangle. I do like that it's still quite wide. Of course you can also get some width out at the middle of the leg more if you want to create a flare. I'm just gonna pin it one more time, I guess. Refine it a little bit, but roughly I don't mind it like this. A little bit on the wider side and casual. Because the waist is actually a little too wide. I ended up with a jeans that is basically hipless. Slightly unusual, slightly humbling. Now if you didn't cut it yet, you can use the first triangle as a pattern for your second triangle. Now it can be helpful, hothead, to draw your seam allowance on the inside of the fabric, especially in the upper corner, because there's a lot of seams coming together here. I already zigzagged the edges of the triangle, however you can skip this for now and do it later, which I'll show in a bit. Now I'm double checking if the corner of the triangle, so without the seam allowance, is still lining up with the marking I previously made. Of course not. So just mark it again, because this is the exact point up to where we have to close the leg. So I didn't open the waistband, because I'm being efficient, or lazy. So it's gonna be a tiny tad annoying to close the entire leg up to the waistband, as the seam allowance is folded in there. Alternatively, you can open the waistband for a bit, but if you're gonna sew in the direction from the knee upward, it should be doable to close it almost all the way without all that hassle, and just sew right into that fold there. So starting exactly at the marking with your back and forward stitch and ending right into that fold at the waist. Then pin the triangle to one of the sides first, lining up the marking of the corner basically exactly with this last stitch of the seam we just made on the sewing machine. The closer together the better, so I'm really piercing my pin right through the marking, as well as on the other side right at the base of the stitch. So I'm really sure that it's lined up almost perfectly, so that when I sew it in later, I sew exactly until the marking. You might want to use the hand wheel here for that last bit, so to make sure to not go too far. that you end up exactly in the marking, right where you put your pin in, or exactly not. It's been a while that I've done something like this, so as always, if there's better ways to do this, please leave it in the comments. On the other side, you can check that the stitch line should basically come together and look like one continuous line, without any gaps or discrepancy. I guess I was very close, but just to be sure, I added a few extra stitches to make it line up even better. If necessary, of course, seam rip it open first. I'm just checking the outside. But sometimes the seam allowances that they use in jeans are a little bit bigger, so when I close it with my 1 centimeter, you basically see a dark blue line on the outside, which sometimes I don't care. But today is a special day as we're doing an application and getting all the seam allowance in the seam allowance. I'm pinning the other side of the triangle in the exact same way with extra special care in the corner. Sewing from the other side now, where I can actually still see on the jeans where it was ever closed, making it easier to avoid any of the dark seam allowances peeking through on the outside. And it's also easier to see until where to sew, as you can see the stitches of the jeans that we did previously. Not gonna say it myself, but I'm impressed. Oh, there, I said I'm impressed. Nobody's saying it. Long story short, pretty decent. Otherwise, do it again. And press to impress even further. That is, all the seams open with the tip of your iron. I was planning to leave the seam allowance on, but then forgot my plan. What plan? But you might want to leave it. Somewhat symmetrical jeans would be somewhat admirable. The whole reason I left those seam allowances on was actually to be able to copy it to the other side, but now I cut them off thinking it's about time. Why did I leave those on? But now it's a little bit hard to see. Still have to do the other side. There was a thought behind this whole thing, but it's gone. Bye bye thoughts. I can use this as a sort of guide. So whilst I'm getting creative with my cutoffs, if you left it on, I just recommend to copy the seam to the other side, for example by making a marking every 10 centimeter and see how much you went inwards at that marking. Of course, we're repeating all the steps for the second leg. And if you're unsure, pin and fit it first, just like before. And if it looks symmetrical, you'll probably be fine. Well, I would almost feel like this is enough work without the application on there, but we will have to continue. To finish the seams on the inside, I'm gonna serge. You can zigzag if you don't have a serger. 2 seam allowances together at a triangle, and then in one go continue upward with only 1 seam allowance, and do the same on the other side. And when you do that almost right, it almost looks professional. Almost.
Wow.
And as the very last step, I'm gonna top stitch the seam allowances onto the jeans. Fold the seam allowance underneath to the side that makes the most sense. And then top stitch very close to the seam. And I did it on both sides of the triangle. To make this easier, there's no drawer on my machine, so I can just move the leg up the machine. Here you can actually see the difference quite well. The top is just pressing, and then on the bottom it's top stitch. It should look more snatched. And if it's not, it might be wobbly and you have to play around with your tension or use a bigger stitch length. But when you iron it, it usually improves it a lot. However, today we're mostly doing it to make it easier to apply our application. Hallelujah. I thought we would never get there. Okay, finally, time to pin our applique pattern to the fabric. Don't forget, we need to cut it 4 times, because we're gonna mirror it 2 on each side. So I'm recycling another old jeans, cutting 2 layers at the same time. So my initial intuition would be to take actually a little bit of a different color denim for the applique. But to stay a little bit true to the Louis Vuitton style, make sure you look at the picture again. Adding about half a centimeter extra all around that we can use to create the fraying edges, or at least where possible. But I think my little thingies here got a little bit on the small side, so I can't add extra seam allowance there. And at all the bottoms I'm gonna add some extra seam allowance, just because I don't really know exactly how we're gonna finish the hem and all. I'd rather have it a little too long. Then we're gonna snip all the edges in, only the extra edge, so not further into the pattern. This will help the fraying a little bit in the washing machine later. Take a yarn thread, sewing thread. It's not gonna be attracting too much attention. I wouldn't take a contrasting color for that. Now I had a few options. Nothing really matched my fabric, and if there's one regret I have in my life, it's not going to the store to buy a proper matching thread. Okay, I sound slightly overly dramatic, but honestly, we're gonna zigzag all around the edges and top stitch after that. Even if you sew it perfectly well, the stitching isn't gonna look that cute, as in, oh hell no. can see all the cuts we just made. So this is where we want to allow the fraying. So a little more inward from there. I'm gonna add a small zigzag stitch. So we will get this cool fraying, slaying, edgy edges living on the edge and whatnot. But the applique will not loosen over time. If you would want to make the edges even more slay and fray, you could potentially take 2 layers of fabric, in which case I would zigzag them together now. But I just thought a little too late of that. We have to continue. It's taking so long, we can't go back now. I might have slightly underestimated how long that took, but worth the ease of mind just to know that this pants can kick ass over and over and over again without the applications falling off my legs. Let us applicate the applique. I have fusible adhesive with a paper backing for ironing already on it. You can use the one without paper, but you'd have to add your own parchment paper, so width is better. Fold it in 4 so I can cut all pieces in one go. I'm not gonna add an extra edge because we don't want our fray to say night-night. Welcome to the part that we call ironing. Looks like a bunch of scraps. If one only would know how much time it took to make these scraps.
You would not be messy right now.
You don't have the one that has a papery side on it. Very important to get some baking paper now. We don't want to make a hot mess from our iron, like literally. I might take one actually to protect the
20 minutes later.
ironing board. Better be safe than sorry. Okay, on the back we're gonna iron on our fusible adhesive. Make sure to feel which side is the paper. Maybe add a tad of temporary spray glue. If you don't have that, you can also just add a few pins to pin it in place. Or just lift on the edge and go straight in with the iron. The thing is, you can't really do this twice, technically. So best to go with the tippy toe of your iron first, just to make sure it's really at the right spot. And there's a more or less even distance all around the edges that's free, which might need a little bit of ripping, totally fine. And by the way, I left those free, just to make this process a little more convenient. Somehow doesn't seem to fit that perfectly. And at some spots I trimmed down the edges just a little bit more. And then when you're sure, you can go all in with the iron. Some extra parchment paper will prevent any of the glue coming onto your iron. Iron it on for at least 10 seconds. Let it cool down briefly and then rip off the paper. I'm so confused. How many parts do we need? I thought I had too little, then I found 4 more pieces and now I'm like,
how many legs do I have?
3,000 whoop-whoos later.
I'm gonna put my applications basically diagonally over the seams of the triangle. If you're a little unsure, I'd recommend to pin it first, then look in the mirror. Oh guys, I hope this was gonna be worth all the work. I guess we're gonna actually only be able to decide after it's been into the washing machine eventually. But I guess the placement is sort of alright. This leg is, I guess, maybe a little bit less wide than the inspiration. So we don't really have much room for this teardrop, basically. Aww. Then I'm gonna iron it on with quite some pressure for at least 10 seconds in any spot again. Now, this is gonna be a little annoying. I'm gonna stitch all around the edges again. And to do so, we need to open the inner legs, at least partly, but I ended up having so much fun with my chain stitch that I just opened them all the way. Put on a good podcast or playlist with your recommendations in the comments for whoever is gonna do this crazy project. And stitch right over the zigzag stitch with a regular stitch this time.
1 pair of pants later.
Lastly, closing the inner legs again. Normally I really don't bother with trying to recreate a jean seam again. Just add a normal stitch with zigzag. However, today, I don't know if it's the spring weather or what, but I was feeling particularly motivated. What can I say? The motivation, it lasted as long as you can say, don't cut paper with my fabric scissors. I know. You likely can say that very quickly. Look, I was doing it all wrong. It wasn't lined up well, and I guess I accidentally made the jeans a little bit smaller even. So if there's only one thing you take away from this video, it should be, please don't ask me how to do a jean seam. And better stick to the safe side and just use a normal seam. Lastly, throw it all in the washing machine and hope it survives. When it came out, I used a brush to brush the edges up a little bit more. I don't think I ever had Flaired jeans, but honestly, it makes your legs look tall. I recommend it. Let me know what you think. One last tip, I think if you get out of the washing machine and you don't have a dryer, you might want to fluff up the edges already a little bit with a brush or with your hands when it's still wet, just so it will look extra cute when it's dried off. Please let me know how to deal with noisy neighbors. I never had upper neighbors that make any noise in my life. Literally super distracted all the time, especially when I'm making videos. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe if you liked the video. Don't forget to watch all the many videos on my channel. Oh yeah, like the video if you liked it. If you want to support it in the algorithm, leave a comment. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for my Patreons for supporting the channel. Let me know what you think. Yeah, and my fly is broken, so if you ever see me with the fly open, I know. I know.